I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with the dude and Golan. Biggest thing, obviously, dropping today, or it's not even the biggest thing because it's mildly trending on X, but it still is the Epstein stuff. The House released, I think, 34,000 documents. They spent much of the summer redacting innocent victims' names so they won't be harmed. Outside was this massive press conference by there are two new victims that were announced that have come forward, but most of it those victims have been out for a while. So this was nothing new, but I did find it extremely interesting that they actually had this press conference. And the first thing one of the victims said was the biggest thing that Epstein would brag about was Trump. And I just found that to be so Kavanaugh-esque, so in the past-esque. Why would you start your press conference with that? I have no idea other than what we could presume.
It's a red flag immediately. There are a couple of things about this press conference. One is that brag that she just said, that Epstein's biggest brag was his relationship to a real estate developer named Donald Trump. Epstein had a painting in his Manhattan townhome of Bill Clinton sitting sideways in a chair, legs draped over the arm, wearing a dress and red high heel shoes, and he was pointing at the viewer, so pointing at you. That was Epstein's biggest flex. Anyone who walked into that house, including Bill Clinton, got to see that photo and know that he owned Clinton. He owned the man to the point that he could have a really embarrassing cross-dressing photo of the man. This is before Trump had his TV shows. Wasn't an international figure. So the fact that that would be the flex and not that Bill Clinton was his biggest asset, that already tells you that what she's saying is a lie. It's a lie. It's a blatant lie. And then the other thing was they said that they were going to release the names. We know who they are and we're going to. Well, what are you waiting for? You had a press conference, release the names, put out who you say are the people that perpetrated these crimes and let the chips fall where they may, meaning if these people were guilty, they should be brought up on charges. And if they were innocent, they should sue you for libel. So either way, there's no reason not to release the names. The fact that they're doing this, and the only reason the Democrats are doing this after having these files for the last 4 years, they could have done all of this, is just political theater. That's all it is.
100%. And I think when Trump says it's a hoax, what he means to say is it's a SHIT show. And that having suffered through that same show for approximately the last 10 years, that's what he's sort of referring to it as. But again, they did that interview on NBC trying to get them, one of the people to at least somebody to say Trump was there. All of them said no. Donald Trump had nothing to do with this. But the most important thing that also came out was you keep on consistently seeing that Ro Khanna and Massey are calling for the discharge bill. It's a discharge bill. And again, you know how it also is a circus? You have MTG getting hundreds of thousands of views on comments she's making. It was one big circus-like event of nothing.
Now, this is what I wanted to talk about. Because MTG, as she's so lovingly known, she keeps pretending that she's fighting for Epstein's victims. But we all know she's not. She's just hijacking their pain. It's what she does on a regular basis. She's not fighting for them. She's fighting for airtime, and she's fighting to do her favorite thing in the world, which is just to bash Jews and bash Israel. It seems to be her number one hobby. She will grab anything she can get her hands on, anything at all, any excuse she can get to recycle the same old anti-Semitic nonsense. Epstein's just the latest version of it, by the way. That's why every time his name comes up, she veers into her conspiracy theories. This time, too, she was like, and Israel. Remember how her face lit up when she got to say that at the end? All these Mossad conspiracies. At the end of the day, she's not exposing predators. She is the predator. The only difference is last time, Epstein was the one that was abusing the victims. This time, she's doing it just to get a couple more licks in against the Jews.
So getting back to it, so you have this, so just so people understand what it is, because not everybody's going to listen to the clip that we listened to from Ron Johnson, right? And James Comer, which was this discharge thing with Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey is basically saying, release everything you have. And they're saying, we cannot release everything we have because not everything has been redacted. We cannot just release victims' names or underage victims' names who are now either dead or middle-aged women, as they said. So just to put it into context, they have more subpoena power, and they're subpoenaing the estate of Epstein. They're subpoenaing the DOJ to get all the records. So they're taking this seriously. And the idea that they're not shows you again that it's a S show, not a hoax. But at the same time, same thing.
Well, what Speaker Johnson said is that the request that Ro Khanna and Massey put forward was sloppily written, and that's why they can't go with it. It doesn't actually protect the child victims, which is one of Speaker Johnson's biggest concerns with releasing the files. He wants to make sure that, one, victims are protected in it, in the order demanding the release. So make sure that the victims are protected, and their thing cited the wrong law, the wrong statute. So it wouldn't have protected the victims. And the other thing that he wants to protect is whistleblowers, because he wants to encourage more whistleblowers to come forward. Those two things are valid reasons not to release the files until the request is rewritten so that it protects both victims and whistleblowers. I agree with that. I think it's logical. It makes sense. And Johnson seemed very sincere when he was talking about the plight of the victims and how long it's taken them to seek justice. So his heart is in the right place. He wants to do the right thing. Massey just put forward something that was haphazardly written, and it needs to be rewritten. And then I think it could move forward. That would be the way forward.
And not just that, Massey is a good, I mean, not Massey, Massey's a piece of you-know-what, but Ron Johnson's a good man, not a very political type person. He's not really what you would call a politician. This is a position he did not want. And James Comer, if you saw him during the interview, the guy doesn't have much of a poker face. And he was saying he's subpoenaing Alex Acosta, everybody from the 2005 trial. And he was talking about this is what he's been doing all summer. So for anybody to think this is disingenuous is they're totally lying, and they're looking for clickbait. I mean, that's it.
Not only that, but the idea that Trump wouldn't have his administration do everything in their power, even if it is self-serving, to do anything they could to make the story go away. It's ridiculous. This story hurt him with his own base. He wants this to go away, obviously. So maybe it's for benevolent reasons. Maybe it is like he really wants to help the victims, and that's totally possible. And maybe it's for selfish reasons, like he never wants to hear this guy's stupid name ever again. But either way, it's clear that he has a vested interest in making the investigation really thorough, not playing games. If he really thought he would be destroyed by the Epstein story, why would he be pushing it so much, like making it part of his firebrand on the campaign trail, as if everyone would forget about it the minute he got in office? It makes no sense. The idea that he's pussyfooting around this right now just doesn't wash, if you're being honest. And we know that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey, two massive pieces of shit, by the way, are clearly not being honest when it comes to this.
Well, all that said, we said our piece. We know where we land on this thing. We would love the information to be released in a responsible manner, but we do want it to be released. The administration wants it to be released as well. And it looks like that's where we're headed.
Well said. And Trump is nowhere implicated in any single part of this go-on. Not one thing. Every time his name is brought up, every single person has said no, that he has no part of this. And this has to be repeated by us over and over and over and over again, because he's not going to get the backing of Marjorie Taylor Greene on this. He's not going to get the backing of Thomas Massey. And the reason I bring them up is because they're Republicans. Watch the press conference with Mike Johnson and Comer, and judge for yourself before you speculate. We're not here to speculate. Interestingly enough, I put a post out last night of all the states that have been Dem run. And the whole point of it was that this is something the Republicans should be blasting all over. Billboards, electronic, everywhere, just blasting these crime statistics. Trump has proof of concept. I'm not really sure what more proof of concept one would need.
That cracking down on crime works?
Yeah, that cracking down on crime works. And we have a solution for it.
Well, what's really great is that the proof of concept worked in Washington, D.C., and he needs to roll it out to Chicago next. Flood the zone, bring them all in. 50-something people were shot in Chicago last week. And for Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, to come out and say, we don't want federal troops here to help with crime. Brandon Johnson, who's one of the worst mayors in America, if not the worst mayor in America. He's a racist race baiter who there's nothing
a long
about.
line.
Yeah, and he's doing nothing about the crime that's happening there. 245 people were killed in Chicago this year. 1,121 have been shot.
So to your point, and I want to bring this up because we've touched on this a lot, but I do think it's an incredibly important issue, is this to the America only crowd, right? You don't hear them talking about this. Isn't that interesting that this isn't a huge subject to the America only crowd? This should be like the thing they're highlighting the most, because this is what we're talking about right now, is the survival of America. So if you believe in America only, which by the way sounds so much like a flat earther, shouldn't this be what they're specifically talking about?
Yeah, this is 1000% right. And you know what's crazy about it is that so-called America only crowd, the people who they're just constantly screaming 24/7 about how the government should ignore everything else that's happening outside of our doors. Our neighbor's house is on fire, don't worry about it. Can't jump to our roof, only focus on us. Only myopically with tunnel vision, only focus on our cities, only focus on our people, only focus on our problems. They should be throwing a parade for Trump right now. That's what he's doing. He's literally doing what they claim they want. He's taking over these broken cities. He's cracking down on crime. He's putting American citizens first. He's focusing on American citizens, period. And yet, crickets, we hear nothing out of these people. I'm not talking about we hear criticism. We hear nothing. They don't even talk about it. They just keep talking about Epstein and all this other nonsense. It's infuriating. I'll tell you what it is. Half these guys, no, it's not half. It's all of these woke right, Fourth Reich idiots. They're not America first. They're not America only. They're just conspiracy junkies for hire. They are paid off bad actors, most of them, if not all of them. The fact that they're not celebrating this right now tells you everything you need to know, because they don't want America first. They don't want America only. They want America in chaos, because that's what their handlers want. And they want to be able to sell books. They want to be able to sell podcasts. They want to get their clicks. They want to get their likes. They want to get their money. And that's how you know that these people are all charlatans across the board.
It should be this one thing everybody's talking about. Democrats, Republicans, American only, all those groups. I mean, 245 people were shot. I mean, like there's 53 that were shot last weekend. So everybody should be talking about it. And the thing to point out is that these are mostly black people shooting black people. And it's terrible, especially for the parents of these kids that are getting killed. So, I've said this before. I'll say it again. As a parent, my heart breaks for these parents, and something can be done about it. It's been proven. The Democrats have this policy that big cities are just unsafe hellholes, and that's just the way it is. It's just the way it is, and nothing can be done about it. And Trump just proved them wrong, just like he did with the border when they said nothing can be done about the border. Nothing can be done. We need to let 10,000 people in a day. There's nothing that can be done. It's a broken system. He shut it down in a week. And the same thing with crime in D.C. He shut it down in a week. Brought in the Marines or the National Guard, and crime has just fallen off a cliff.
And federalize the police. And Bowser is asking now for it to be done indefinitely. So I mean, she has come to her senses, but you could even hear the difference when she speaks and Brandon Johnson speaks and Pritzker speaks. There's no doubt about it. They're in coordination. Pritzker obviously wants to become the next president. I don't think he has a shot in hell.
There's no way. No way.
It's absolutely impossible. There's 0% chance.
But you reminded me of something when Nixon, and I learned this from Ben Stein, but when Nixon ran, and I brought this up before, there was a song called The Eve of Destruction, and it was anti-war, anti-all this stuff, and it was a very liberal Democrat song, leftist, whatever it was. And Nixon actually used it in his campaign and to turn it on them. And it was really a brilliant strategy. And you brought up a few words, and that's just the way it is. Some things will never change. That was a song by Bruce Hornsby in The Range, which was essentially the same idea, right? It was about racism, his song, right? And it was all about how catastrophic racism is in America. But when you look at these cities, it's almost like, yeah, he wrote the song about that issue, but turn it on them and use the song to highlight the systemic issues in these areas and what Dems have done.
Yeah, the only racism that still exists in the country, really, from a systemic level, is the Democratic Party and the welfare that they're doing, and they're not letting anyone in Democrat-run cities get ahead. It's blatant racism. They claim that nobody has agency there, and therefore the Democrats need to control everything. And look how that's been working out for the last 80 years. Some of these cities are just hellholes, dangerous, unsafe places to live where predominantly black kids are getting shot on a daily basis. So, if there is systemic racism, it's on that side of the party. I saw a great post, and it was really simple. It stated Gavin Newsom cleaned up San Francisco for the Chinese president. So when the Chinese president came to town after the pandemic, and San Francisco was just rife with homeless and crime and feces and drug needles everywhere, in one weekend, Gavin Newsom cleaned up that whole place and then let it go back to hell right after the guy left. But he managed to do it in one weekend for the Chinese president, and Donald Trump cleaned up Washington, D.C. for the American people.
In a week, in less than a week. Okay,
in less than a week. They are not the same. These two people are not the same.
Listen, I think this is the great divide we're having in our country right now.
It's such an easy win, though. This is one of those that, like, the Democrats are taking a stand on the side of criminals and crime, and the Republicans are taking a stand on the side of law and order and safety. This is so easy. It's a no-brainer, for sure. Double down on it. Keep on going.
I 100% agree with you, and I think this should be what they campaign on and champion on. I want to move on, though, because yesterday Trump put out a very interesting post on Truth Social, which was really highlighting the meeting between Xi Jinping, Putin, and Kim Jong-un. And he wrote, the big question to be answered is whether or not President Xi of China will mention the massive amount of support and blood that the United States of America gave to China in order to help it secure its freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invader. Many Americans died in China's quest for victory and glory. I hope they are rightfully honored and remembered for their bravery and sacrifice. May President Xi and the wonderful people of China have a great day. Please give my warmest regards to Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's brilliantly put. And again, this is where we're going to have a huge divide between. This is where he's going against certain fringes and elements in our own party. We know where the left stands on certain things, and I've said we can't worry about the left. But he's talking about something that's an existential danger, an existential crisis. And yesterday, when he shot that boat, when he ordered the shooting of the boat of Venezuelan drug dealers and gun runners, I couldn't help but think it was a shot at them. And it was a shot at people that are thinking about taking advantage, that have taken advantage. Because, it was great. There are a lot, but I mean, there's so many more in Venezuela. This is a non-ending thing.
The Venezuelan government it's illegitimate. They rigged the election last time. The guy's a gangster. He's a dictator. He's starving his own people. Venezuela was one of the wealthiest South American countries. And now they tried socialism, and it's one of the poorest, and the guy leading it won't get out of office. So it's typical, predictable. That's where socialism goes. And as far as Tren de Aragua, the boat that he just blew up with a couple of drug runners that refused to stop in international waters, completely legal. But that is a message to them. Venezuela has Hezbollah-run training camps.
Exactly.
On their territory, in their land, on their land.
And by the way, for our listeners, this isn't some new idea. It's not like Venezuela just now got broken into and Hezbollah starting to set up some camps. Hezbollah has been using Venezuela as a training ground for over 2 decades. Ever heard of Hugo Chavez? He's the one who initially said, come on in. And then Maduro let him stay because these are all just corrupt gangsters, basically, as men talked about. So they have training camps there. They use drug routes there. They do ghost flights to Tehran. It's all been documented since around the mid-2000s. So everyone knows, everyone just turns a blind eye to it.
This is going to come to a head. We cannot have Lebanon, a Lebanese Shia militia, set up shop in Venezuela in striking distance to the U.S. Absolutely not. So it's amazing that all the previous administrations were too weak to actually do anything about that, too fickle to actually take decisive action. Trump just sent a whole bunch of warships there as a message, and he took out the first boat. Great. Take them all out.
It's sort of what Israel is doing with last week when they took out the whole leadership. And there's another story that really doesn't get covered. It's fascinating that he took out the whole leadership of the Houthis. They were all driving and all dead.
Yeah, he just missed the top. They missed the top guy, al-Houthi, the guy who the whole organization is named after. He's hiding in the mountains. They're all hiding. They fled. Anyone left, it has fled. All of those arrogant spokespeople and generals and their prime minister, who's not actually the prime minister of Yemen. He's the prime minister of the Houthi-run sections of Yemen. So that's a terrorist organization. They took him out. The legit prime minister, Israel would love to prop up, get him back in. But, that's a war that's been going on for a long time. Saudi backed the legitimate government in Yemen, and the world condemned Saudi Arabia for the war. It's unbelievable. The Saudis actually went through what the Israelis are going through right now in Gaza, where they were demonized for the way they were prosecuting that war. And it hurt them, internationally and in their ability to fight, because the Houthis were emboldened by all of the international pressure placed on the Saudis and zero international pressure placed on the Houthis. These reports keep on coming out. There's a report that just came out. It was a giant study by, I think, Bar-Ilan University. And it went through all of the international aid giving to different conflict zones and the amount that is siphoned off and used by the warring parties to fund their war. And we're not just talking about the one in Gaza, which we know that, and it states that 90% of UN humanitarian aid went to Hamas to fund their war efforts. So they just stole the aid, sold it, then sell it back to the Palestinian people, and then they make money to pay their fighters. And they also give lots of food to their fighters. But this study did it on all conflicts. And they said across the board, NGOs and the United Nations and non-governmental organizations and the United Nations, their aid to the tune, on average, I think it was 85% gets siphoned off. And we're talking about places like Yemen, places like Somalia, all the different conflicts around the world. And it's systemic. It basically is the United Nations and these NGOs turn a blind eye, if not make an agreement with places like the Taliban, where they did that too, where they said, we're going to let you steal half our trucks, but please, please, please let the other half get through. You take 3/4 and we'll send 25% to the actual people who need it. And the worst example was the United Nations Relief Works Agency, which is UNRWA, which was dedicated to the Palestinians in Gaza. They were the worst. I think it was over 90% of that aid was stolen, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part is that the United Nations runs cover for that. So instead of identifying the problem and exposing it, they hide the problem and try to pretend like it's not there. So that puts them in cahoots with the terrorists. And I hope that two things happen. One is the United States government should designate UNRWA a terrorist organization. And the other one is they need to get rid of Cindy McCain, the head of the World Food Program. Fire her, get rid of her, and get someone else in there that is actually accountable, someone who is not kowtowing to terrorists.
Listen, 100%. Golan, your thoughts on this?
No, I think Men said it incredibly well. There's not a lot left to say about it. If you don't understand by now that UNRWA is a terrorist organization, that it hands out aid and food and all the stuff that's meant to go to the quote unquote hungry to the terrorist organizations, like they're handing out candy on Halloween, then there's not much to say to you. You don't want to know. It's not that you are ignorant to the information. Everyone understands this by now that wants to understand it. And by the way, UNRWA is just one symptom of a larger problem. You're talking about every single aspect of the United Nations through and through. I mean, every UNESCO heritage sites, I'm sure if I dug deep enough, I would find that they didn't give some Jewish site heritage status, but they gave some other one, got paid off to put some other one on the list. We know they did this, actually. We know they went through and there were Jewish sites and Jewish historical sites that they won't acknowledge that, but they pretend like Israel or like the Jews have no connection to Israel historically. It's disgusting, everything about the United Nations through and through. One of the most corrupt, down to its bones, corrupt organizations of all time. So yeah, I think Men's absolutely right. UNRWA and everything else that goes along with it, all those NGOs and everything else, just corruption through and through, and it's time to dismantle all of it.
I also want to add, though, to your point. You keep, it's amazing when you bring up these points and just close it out a little bit, but it all comes back to the United Nations, which is something we've been saying really needs to be taken off of U.S. soil. I don't even grasp the concept of having the utility of having the United Nations in America. Everything you've listed, everything we list, always comes back to the United Nations. Even when you look at what's going on, as you said, I don't think people get when you say Hezbollah is in Venezuela. I don't think people comprehend what that is. I don't even think people realize how close Venezuela is distance-wise to America. And this is a huge issue we're talking about. This is not a little thing.
Yeah. So you have a lot of Lebanese people in Central South America. And the reason for that is because most of them predominantly are Christian Lebanese that were forced to flee from Lebanon, and they found refuge, took home in Central and South America. Then you have Venezuela, who decided to align itself with Iran and all of the Iran Shia proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas or whatever else, other terrorist organizations that they allowed in. And it is extremely dangerous. It's in our hemisphere. We need to root that out, get rid of that corrupt government in Venezuela, and liberate the people of Venezuela. I'm not advocating.
And let's make money on it. You know what?
I'm not advocating for boots on the ground, but there are things that we could do which previous governments were not. Like the last government, Biden made a deal with Venezuela that they were going to lift sanctions and let them sell their oil if they were to hold free and fair elections. And then they reneged on that, and nobody reimposed all these sanctions.
Listen, I'll be honest with you. I'm not opposed necessarily to boots on the ground in a place like Venezuela. I don't think that poses a great risk to our troops. I truly don't. And obviously, that's a big decision to be made. But if we could get into Venezuela, take it over, you're talking about the financial wise and security wise, a great asset to the United States of America. So that's just my humble opinion on that. I get it. It's not a forever war. It's nothing like that. And we have to stop comparing and contrasting everything to the mistakes of 2005 or 2000 or whatever wars people want to talk about, especially Afghanistan.
I actually totally disagree on that one. I think that we have to be really careful about stuff like that. I think putting boots on the ground in Venezuela would be kind of a disaster, and not because the threat isn't real. Obviously, we all understand Hezbollah having training camps that close to us in our own hemisphere is a direct danger to America. They are, like you said, they are much, much, much closer than people even imagine them to be. That's not why. It's because ground wars in Latin America play out exactly in the way we don't want them to. Just think about it. We've seen this movie before. You put troops on the ground. You're not just fighting Hezbollah. Right. They're little training camps. That's not something that we really are going to take a lot of time to deal with. Now you're entangled with Maduro's military. You're entangled with the FARC. For those of you who don't know what that is, for our listeners, it's Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. This is the Marxist-Leninist guerrilla movement. It's been around since the 1960s. It's just drug trafficking, kidnapping, extortion. I mean, it's like basically dealing with another Hezbollah. And then you have all the cartels who thrive on asymmetric warfare. I mean, this thing that should have been like a quick counterterrorist kind of mission, but actually does have the potential to become an open-ended nation-building project. And it's the last thing that we need. And especially because we know Trump already proved what you can do when he did what he did in Iran, right? Iran's proxies thought they had a free pass, and then there we go. One quick trip over, it was like, thank you very much for your service. And we were done. Iran suddenly was without a nuclear program, and not one boot had to go on the ground. It reset the entire Middle Eastern structure, at least for the moment. We'll see where it goes from here. But that's how you do it. Just go in. You want to deal with the Hezbollah and send a message to everybody else? Go right over, bomb the training camps. You crater the runways, you torch the infrastructure, then you go home. Message sent, problem solved. I think it's a much stronger way to go. You can show that strength without getting into the quagmire.
I think there are better ways to do it. We could do it like whack-a-mole. We send in a Tomahawk missile, we take out Maduro, and then the next guy comes up, pops his head up, and you go, hey, are you going to be like the last guy? You want to change your ways? And keep on whacking them until you get somebody who's willing to play ball.
Remember, we did have somebody that was there. They had an elected prime minister that we acknowledged. He just couldn't get into power because of the brutality of Maduro. So this isn't like
I think it's a presidential system there, and we do acknowledge that there's another guy that is the legitimate president or leader of that country.
I love that. Golan could tell us his name.
Pretty sure you're talking about Juan Guaido, I think is how his name is pronounced. So Maduro, as usual, had a rigged election. And this other guy, Juan, basically called himself the interim president. under the Venezuelan constitution because it had been a rigged election. Trump recognized him. So the U.S., a bunch of other countries, they all recognized him as the legitimate leader. He was considered the democratic face of the resistance against Maduro, but Maduro withheld from Cuba and Russia and Iran and China and all the normal axis of evil players, took control back. A couple of years later, I think 2022, Guaido was out. Maduro took power back, and that was that. So I think that's who you're talking.
There he goes.
Okay, I want to move on, though, to the courts as we're talking about this. The courts, of course, in an appellate court. And this is a big deal because now it's got to go to the Supreme Court. A federal appeals court ruled on Tuesday that the Trump administration cannot speed deportations of migrants accused of being members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua using the 18th century wartime law in a 2-1 ruling. The Fifth Circuit, again, man, here it is. It's like you have these rogue judges. I don't even want to call them rogue judges. You have absolute leftist judges with leftist ideology who were put in there. Listen, for all we know, they could have been put in there by Bush. For all we know, they could have been put in there by Obama. It goes on and on. The point is, this is the uphill battle and that Trump and the American people have to face. These judges right now, this is really akin to releasing a rapist, a murderer on the street with no cash bail. These judges, as we spoke to Gene Hamilton about this, Republicans really need to start trying to impeach judges because they can impeach judges.
Yeah, it's the only thing that we can do besides escalate these things to the Supreme Court, which I am pretty confident that the administration would win those cases. There's no basis, there's no grounds on which we need to harbor illegal aliens that have committed crimes, both here and abroad. Period. End of story. There's no sane country that allows you in. You apply to get a visa to go to any country in the world. They will ask you if you have a criminal record. And if you do, they just deny you entry. So why is it different here? And why are these judges taking the side of foreign criminals over their own citizens? U.S. citizens are at risk by these guys. So it makes no sense. They need to get rid of them. I think they should even expose them, just shame them, publicly shame them in their communities, put up billboards that detail what these people are doing. I don't even know.
They hide behind, you're right, they hide behind their robes and their dark rooms. You're 100%, it's a great point you raised because there's so many of these judges, right? And we dealt with it with FISA, right? When with the FISA courts, and this is why I love Mike Lee for going. He was the guy screaming, Jesus is coming for 20 years, talking about how dangerous FISA is, and nobody listened to him until they started using that on Trump's campaign. And right, what it was that judges could be pretty much shown any sort of nothing. And issue a warrant for wiretaps for all of these things. These judges need to be. This is where the thin line between I don't want people doxxed and harmed, but at the same time you can't cloak yourself and hide, man.
It's not doxing. It's not doxing when there's a judge. The names are public. You put it out, but you put up a billboard in his community detailing what he's doing to other communities in the country by defending or refusing to allow dangerous people to be deported from the country. There's some real issues. And when I say real issues, I'm talking about the ones that threaten America. And these activist judges is one of them. There's other things happening as far as ballot harvesting that threatens America. Mail-in ballots, unsolicited mail-in ballots, where they just mail out ballots to everybody on the voter rolls. When I was in 2020, I got 6 different mail-in ballots to the different addresses that I had lived in at one time or another. My sister called me and said, "Oh, we got a ballot for you." I said, "What are you talking about? I got one at my own home." They were just mailing them out all over the place, rife with fraud. It just opens up. Like if you want to instill a level of confidence in our systems and our democracy or our constitutional republic, then you need to safeguard these things, not open them up to every possibility of fraud. So that needs to be done. And then the other thing is, the Democrats are actively registering expats overseas. This is a big problem. So they are going to, the margins that some of these elections are won is by a few hundred votes to a few thousand votes. And they are going overseas and re-registering people that have been off the voter rolls forever. And they are just placing them in swing states. So, I mean, you talk about serious problems. We've got some serious things, serious challenges that need to be addressed before the next election.
Listen, you're 100% correct. Golan, since you're not an expat, but you do live overseas, this is actually a quite dangerous thing.
It's funny. I'm reminded of when Mitt Romney said he wanted to fix the tax system, but while it's broken, he's going to take advantage of it because he's not a sucker, right? Same kind of idea here is, yeah, I vote from abroad, and I do, and my wife and I both voted every time we've lived in other places, and we've lived all over. We were in Bulgaria, we were in Israel, we're in Spain, we were in France. So we've done this a bunch of times, and not a bunch of times, but as many times as we could. We'll take advantage of it because it's something that exists right now, and it sounds noble, right? This idea of Americans abroad still having a say. Let's separate out like soldiers on base and things like that. I'm talking about people like me who just decided to live elsewhere. And I think there are issues with it. I think, first of all, accountability. If you're living somewhere else, but your vote still counts in some community in Ohio or in Arizona or whatever it is, and you're making decisions based on what the day-to-day consequences are going to be of American policy for other people, but you won't have to deal with it. You won't have to deal with the crime. You won't have to deal with border security. You won't have to deal with even taxes. There are tax breaks you get if you live abroad for a certain period of time every year. And so all of that is to say that your ballot counts the same as some guy who actually has to sit in the middle of all of that. I think that disconnect is dangerous. And I'm not even I'll get into security in a second. The idea of, if you are sitting abroad, I'm very careful. Of course, because I do this with you guys, I'm doing tons of research. I'm watching stuff on every media platform I can. I'm at left, right, and center. I'm absorbing all of it. But most people, they get whatever is right outside their front door. And so if you're soaking up foreign media, if you're soaking up foreign narratives, foreign propaganda, a lot of these places don't love America that much. And they're going to tell you what they think about America, and you're going to be influenced by it. So if you're voting based on someone else's worldview about what's going to happen in America, I don't love that. And then, of course, there's the security aspect of it. Overseas ballots are notoriously vulnerable. There's no way they can't be because they're mailed through the Foreign Postal Service. They're handled by people and governments that don't exactly love us all the time. And it's very easy to tamper. It's very easy for these things to get lost in transit and everything else. If we're worried about ballot integrity at home, but we're cool with envelopes like floating around Caracas and Beijing, it's insanity. So yeah, I think there are a lot of problems with it.
And by the way, I am not exactly sure, Mend, of the numbers. So I don't know how many expats are living abroad, but this is obviously everything they do is heavily financed, heavily financed. And it's a machine that's heavily well run, and we cannot rest on our laurels. That's why we keep on bringing up ideas of what Republicans can do. I want to move on, though, to Trump just came out and said, he posted on True Social, tell Hamas to immediately give back all 20 hostages, not 2 or 5 or 7, and things will change rapidly. It will end. Something that people missed is Israel actually took out the Hamas spokesperson. But what's amazing, Mend, is that he had 1,500 people under him running the propaganda. They literally had the size. When I say 1,500, that's double the size of a unit in Israel. That's how many people that Hamas's well-run, oiled machine of propaganda has been going out. This is one of those hard jobs that it's easy to replace. You could replace a Sinwar. Sometimes you could replace this. But when you have somebody like this, especially in that region that has that technical skill, that's a good person to get rid of.
Yeah, the guy ran an extremely effective disinformation media campaign, social. I mean, they have talking points that goes out to all the people. And for a long time, the Israelis ignored it. Their talking points was every time you refer to Israel, you talk about them as settler colonialists and apartheid and racist. And they drill it again and again and again. And as we talked about previously, the law of exposure, I think it was, the more you put something out, the more it becomes normalized. So they just keep on pushing that out. It's an old Nazi propaganda thing. Is that, eventually it becomes, or Soviet thing, where you repeat the lie long enough, it becomes a truth. So they've been doing that, and the Israelis haven't been pushing back. Like if you're in an interview with BBC and the guy who's opposing you says apartheid, you immediately stop that. You shut that down. You kill that interview. You do not continue just letting them repeat insane things, or you just fight fire with fire and come back with them and claim that they eat babies, they eat children, they drink blood, and they eat eyeballs. Like, just the most insane, asinine things. Let it go off the rails.
Go on to his point. This is something we've discussed a lot, which is obviously losing the propaganda war. I don't think it's much different than the Republican Party and Trump losing the propaganda war.
Yeah, but also it totally makes sense. It's easy to lose the propaganda war if the media is overrun with the very people you're fighting, right? So Republicans are always going to lose the propaganda war in America as long as the mainstream media is infested with lefty woke reporters who all repeat the same doctrine, say the same allowed phrases all at the same time in lockstep, have that same Borg mentality. And with Israel, to your point, it's the same thing. It's just worse because it's not just liberal lunatics there. The anti-Israel press is crawling with the most disgusting, vile, Nazi, anti-Semitic, putrid, rape apologist, terror-supporting scum to ever walk the earth. And you can't win a propaganda war, or at least it's really hard to when the enemy owns the microphones.
But men, to your point, I don't listen. If they have a counterpoint, those for the West or for Israel, they immediately get cut off. The screen gets cut off. The interview gets edited. Listen, at the end of the day, the reality is there's nothing we could do, and I'm talking about as civilized individuals, to counter what the media. This is like their last shot at taking down the free world. And I really look at Israel as the last beacon of fighting for the free world. And if Israel doesn't win and Israel's not allowed to win, we all lose. And I don't put that in the sense of lose. I mean, we're just one step away from becoming Britain and all these other countries.
Yeah, they're definitely at the forefront. Israel's at the edge of the spear fighting this fight. But as we just talked about, these terrorist organizations are already in our hemisphere, in Venezuela. God knows where else they are. Lots of them snuck into the country under Biden. That is probably the most fearful thing. Here, listen to any of the numbers out there. They say there's between 1,000 and 2,000 highly trained, specialized sleeper agents in the U.S. just waiting. I thought with the war with Iran, things were going to happen. I was absolutely very fearful that that's when these guys would start enacting stuff. But maybe they have a bigger plan and they're waiting for something bigger and they didn't want to just shoot from the hip. So it's scary, but thank God we're doing these deportations and nabbing some of these people and getting them out of the country and continue doing it.
Again, it's like, this is like, we're talking about such common sense issues. And you had somebody, and this is why PBS needs to be shut down. Literally needs to be shut down, because you had a reporter on PBS saying, well, what's Lebanon going to do if they don't have Hezbollah defending them? I'm not kidding either. And so just so people understand, the Hezbollah is in Lebanon. I mean, this is what people don't realize. They're two different factions, and for a long time, Hezbollah, especially before the beeper parade of castration, they're the dominating force. And so right now, what's going on, just so people could understand this, is Tom Barrack is trying to, in a sense, normalize relations with Lebanon and Israel. And it's for Hezbollah to put down their weapons. I don't see that happening. I see this as being a pipe dream. Why in God's name would Hezbollah put down their weapons, especially when the Lebanese army doesn't really fight? They're not fighters, men. They're just not trained or skilled.
Well, before the pager operation, there was no way in hell that the government of Lebanon and their army, which the U.S. funds to the tune of billions of dollars, was able to counter Hezbollah. So what happened was this Shia army funded by Iran set up an army inside of Lebanon, funded it, armed it, and it was their way of attacking Israel through a proxy. So they said, we don't have to directly attack Israel. We could have set up this terrorist organization on your border, load them up with thousands, hundreds of thousands of rockets and missiles, and they could fire it at you. They could fight with you, and we don't have to get our hands dirty. After the pager attack, Hezbollah was so weakened that there was a new government installed in Lebanon, and they finally said that they want to have a monopoly on weapons. They want to take away all the weapons from everyone, and the only ones that should have weapons is the Lebanese army. And the first stop that they did was they went to a Palestinian refugee camp. They're refugees because the Lebanese never absorb them. They don't let them buy land and practice medicine or do anything. There's lots of restrictions on the Palestinians in Lebanon. But they went to that village and they said, hand over all your weapons. And the reason that they did that, I think, and the reason they target that one first was because the Lebanese really don't care much for the Palestinians. And the Palestinians are some of the most well-armed people in Lebanon. So starting there, where it's a soft, easy target, go after them, collect those weapons, and they did that. But there's another village that's just, it's like, every terrorist organization in the world is there, and they're all armed to the teeth. That's going to be tougher for them. But it's a start. And if they could do that, and the rhetoric,
It's a start.
rhetoric that's coming out from Lebanon is great, from the Lebanese government. They're trying. They would like to do it. Whether they're capable of doing it, that's yet to be seen. We hope that they can. It would be amazing for Lebanon, which was a beautiful country. They rivaled, they called it the Paris of the Middle East or something. It was a beautiful country before the Palestinians showed up and just started wreaking havoc and sowed civil war. There was a civil war in Lebanon that raged for years because of the Palestinians and the meddling by Syria, which also is no more. So there is an opportunity for Lebanon to change, and I hope it goes through.
Go on to Men's point. I agree with him 100%. I just don't see it happening. Yes, the Lebanese government, but this also goes to my point that I'm constantly saying with our envoys. I'm not knocking people like Witkoff, and I'm not knocking people like Barrack. I just don't think they fully grasp what we're talking about. What the knowledge that Men gives or you give, I don't think Tom Barrack and these guys have a full understanding or comprehension of how insidious and how many hundreds of years, thousands of years this goes. So, Mend, I agree with you 100% too. I wish, I'm the king of wishful thinking, I wish Lebanon would do it. I don't think they could do it by themselves. And it's like whack-a-mole. There's constantly them being propped up. All Iran has to do is spend more money, send more people over there, and so on and so on. So it's like Lebanon's taking a huge risk right now. They are, by doing this, because the heads of Lebanon are game for these people.
I suppose with the amount they're being watched right now, with how much scrutiny is on the region right now and all of that, they're not going to start doing backflips over Hezbollah again, welcoming Iran back into the country. But I don't think Jude is totally wrong here. I think by the time they're done pouring the amount of money they usually pour into stuff like this, who's going to say no, especially in these kind of already corrupt societies? So, I like your idea. I'm going to tell you, I'll put it this way. I will hope, men, that you are right. I will hope that this feels different and that they are going to reform themselves because they have an opportunity to. And I will ignore the instincts and the voice in the back of my head that is shouting at me not to trust it. Okay, I'll do my best to be optimistic.
Well, there are some positive signals that we've seen. The foreign minister of Iran flew to Lebanon. I believe it was the foreign minister, one of their top officials flew to Lebanon to talk to them about Iran sending in more weapons to Hezbollah to rearm them. And the Lebanese government told them to piss off. That would have been unheard of a year ago. Like it's
6 months ago.
Yeah, whatever, right? The pager attack was a year ago. So it would have been unheard of before the pager operation. And now you're seeing that. They're telling them go fly a kite. So there are positive signs. Let's hope that they could actually make it through. There was a time where you could take a bus from Beirut to Tel Aviv, and people did it. Lebanese people would get on the bus.
Explain to people just before you go into that because people don't get the distance. So just explain that distance.
Yeah, it's not far at all. I think it's a 2-hour bus ride. We could look it up.
We'll let Golan tell us exactly the mileage. We'll put Golan to work on this one, and we appreciate that, Golan, so thank you.
Thanks so much for putting me to work. So I looked it up, and it looks like a car driving. It takes about 5 hours to drive there. It's about 367 kilometers. But if you're talking about as the crow flies, the distance, it's about 230 kilometers where you can't drive it in a straight line. And of course, there's no bus service going between the places now. But if you could drive it in a straight line, it's basically 3 hours straight on till morning. So, I think that's way closer than most people realized.
Let's move on a little bit. Rashida Tlaib was censored. Rashida Tlaib hit with House censor threat, accused of celebrating terrorism and pro-Palestinian speech. This happened over the weekend. If people are not familiar with this, in Detroit, there was a huge terrorist event. and where children were calling for the river to the sea. Rashida Tlaib was one of the keynote speakers. And I still don't understand this, man. What the hell is she doing in the House? A censor isn't enough. She cannot be trusted with information. She has access to information that somebody like her or Ilhan Omar or any of their, you know what, can I be honest with probably 100 people on the left or Democrats should not have access to, man.
Yeah, she's an embarrassment. She's an absolute
But
embarrassment.
a danger, not just an
And
embarrassment.
a danger for sure. But I think it's incumbent upon her community, the ones that have voted for her, to get rid of her. If you guys are pro-America, you're living in America, you're reaping the benefits of being American citizens or green card holders or whatever they are, and they're voting for this person to represent them, it looks really bad on the whole community. You don't look like moderates. You don't look like people that are, democracy-loving Americans. You look like you're terror supporters. That's what you guys are looking like. So the pressure should be on them. And the same thing on the Somali community in Minnesota who elected Ilhan Omar. There should be a pressure campaign exposing them for what they're doing and the way it makes them look to the rest of America. And do they want to fit in? Do they want to assimilate? Or do they want to break off and have this person be their representative and be completely shunned? I would be up for deporting all of them. You voted, you get this person, you guys don't assimilate, you don't want to become American, you want Sharia law, go back to where you came from. This was charity. You got charity. So I don't see a pathway to do that, but I would be all for it.
Listen, 100%, and go on to his point. I don't see a pathway to these people changing their votes. I mean, as we constantly state, look at all the other states that haven't had a Republican for, some of them 140, 150 years. I don't see places in Michigan or Minneapolis getting rid of Ilhan Omar, obviously Tlaib, for a long time. So we have to deal with this in another way. And I keep on saying this. It's like we have some really outstanding senators like Tom Cotton and Josh Hawley, who I don't really believe have future presidential careers. But this would be the perfect opportunity for people like them to take it upon themselves, or Mike Lee, to really do what's the right word I'm looking for? A scourge, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like just expel, just get rid of them. I mean, we go Joe McCarthy on these people. We cannot have Muslims or people that we cannot trust.
Anyone, terror supporters. I don't care which terrorism they are.
Yeah.
Predominantly, most of these are radical Islamists. So that's who we're talking about in this case. But if it was the Tamil Tigers or some other crazy terrorist organization or the Black Panthers
or communists like we had, you don't have to really look for something that we actually had it. We had a government infested with communists. And that's what Joseph McCarthy's job and task was.
There was a book called, I think, 3 Felonies a Day, and the average American commits 3 felonies a day. If the CIA, the FBI, or one of those 3-letter organizations actually looked into Tlaib, actually looked into Omar, who's now worth $30 million as a congresswoman, somehow her net worth jumped to 30 mil. They can't find anything wrong with her, then the agency is missing something. So, seriously, just get into it, get on it, get these people. Omar married her brother and committed immigration fraud. Why is that not, moving forward in the justice system? Why is nobody looking into that?
Listen, I think because they've become an endangered, protected class.
Not under this administration. Nobody's above the law in this administration.
And it's about time, too. Enough already of giving everyone a pass. It's time that everybody be held accountable and that this administration is doing it exactly the way it should be.
And on that note, our time has come. I want to thank David, especially on Truth, and everybody on Truth. David shared with me that information last night about where we are in the rankings worldwide, and that was really cool of him and nice of him. He's a little bit under the weather, so I wish him best of health. And I just want to thank everybody that posts and comments and likes and contributes content-wise. It's really helpful. Even when I posted last night, that all the states, somebody pointed out to me, I was wrong about Memphis. They had one Republican governor, mayor since 1967. That was the only mistake I made. So I just want to thank them. You can find us at thedailycheatsheet.com. That's thedailycheatsheet.com. So all you have to do is go there and you will find us everywhere, thedailycheatsheet.com. And again, thank you. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.